That just makes it worse because it looks like we're not with the county.
No. Oh, yeah.
If he goes on for 10 minutes, then that'll be something else.
Yeah. Especially with insurance.
He didn't talk that long before. So, okay. Okay, good evening, everybody. It's 5:30. We do have a Board of Health meeting before our regularly scheduled council meeting tonight. So if everybody would rise, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Since this is a Board of Health meeting, I'll have Chris go ahead and take the roll call.
Councilmember Rowe.
Here.
Councilmember Galloway. Here. Councilmember McIntyre.
Here.
Councilmember Hull.
Here.
Councilmember Pope. Mayor Johnson.
Here.
Approve the minutes for meeting number 6 on September 6, 2022 as presented. Recommendation, approve the minutes.
Move the recommendation.
Second it. Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set to consider condemnation of the structures on the property located at 868 South Davis in the city of Ottumwa, Wapello County, Iowa.
I'll go ahead and open the condemnation hearing, and I believe, Jake, are you going to present?
Good evening, council. The structure located at 868 South Davis was placarded April 10th, 2020. The property was placarded due to a house fire. The house has been open to the elements during the duration of the fire. No progress has been made at the house, and it continues to deteriorate. There's no current repair plan or permission on the property. Condemnation was served by certified mail, posting notice on the property and through the Ottumwa Courier. The staff recommends condemning the structure at 868 South Davis.
Does council have any questions for Jake? Does anyone else have any comments they want to make about this particular property? If not, I'd go ahead and entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Condemn the structures located at 868 South Davis, order prompt demolition, removal, and leveling of the lot, and direct all costs attendant to such actions, including administrative cost, to be assessed against the property and/or collected from the owner or owners thereof. Recommendation, approve the condemnation of the structures located at 868 South Davis.
Do we have a motion for that recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Since we have no other business, entertain a motion to adjourn the condemnation hearing.
So moved.
Second. Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Okay, now we'll start our regular city council meeting, and Chris will take the roll for that.
Councilmember Rowe.
Here.
Councilmember Galloway.
Here.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Here.
Councilmember Hull.
Here.
Councilmember Pope. Mayor Johnson.
Here. Next item is the consent agenda. Do we have a recommendation to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Okay, the next item is approval of tonight's city council agenda. Do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda, except request to remove item H6.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
The next item is the city administrator's report to council and citizens, so I'll turn it over to Phil Rath.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Tonight, I believe we have John Tite with us by phone. He is with Retail Strategies, and He is going to give a brief presentation in regards to something that's up later on the agenda. John, can you hear us? Yeah, maybe you guys on mute.
They just did a phone call, not a team meeting. No.
Barely.
Check the volume.
We can't hear.
Yeah.
We're very interested in working with you. So I can't see the slides if you have them up, but
Is there PowerPoint?
I'm sorry, I can't hear that.
The slides are up.
Oh, okay, great. So we'll move on to, if you just want to, because I can't see them. If you want to advance the slide to number 2, we were born out of a commercial real estate firm, so we are heavily invested in the real estate side of any retail deal. We've been around for about 12 years now. We have clients in 27 states, coast to coast, about 150 of them, and we've kind of cut our teeth in recruiting retail to community. Next slide. These are just kind of a small sample of people we've worked with in the past. Industry involvement. I'm actually coming to you from the IEDC International Economic Development Conference in Oklahoma City right now, which I just left. Heavily involved in the industry and understanding what's going on there. Next slide. Our interest in Ottumwa is twofold. Number one is the national retail recruitment, and number 2 in a downtown. And I'll go a bit into what we're doing in our retail recruitment right here. Next slide. This is kind of our role here to increase tax revenue, jobs, quality of life, and new business. Mainly from a tax revenue perspective, there's a lot to be made by even just adding a couple retail businesses inside your borders. And basically, the idea is to try to keep people spending money in Ottumwa and not driving to Des Moines or any other place to buy their goods and services. Next slide. So this is the data analytics slide. So we do this in 3 steps. Step 1 is the data work. We pay about $250,000 a year for the best data, and we use the same data that the retailers use, Publix and Kroger and Target and many others. Most of the other major retailers use this data provider, so we can speak their language. And so there's a whole lot of that goes into the data of really as our initial first study in the market. Next slide. So Dunkin' Donuts is an example here. This is just kind of a one random thing. This is some data points that they're looking for. We like to go through and understand, because we've had these relationships in the industry, we understand what these people are looking for when they look for a new site. Next slide. The problem is when a lot of these people look up Ottumwa as a site, they just look at your population and they're like, oh, it's too small, or it won't work, or they have a reason doesn't meet their data. This slide here shows more way outside the city boundaries. This is what we can prove by data, or people that are visiting the Ottumwa City Center for their goods and services. So instead of a 20,000 plus population, we're looking at a 43,000 population of people who are actually spending money in the border. Next slide. And we get that from mobile data. So I ran this off the Walmart on Venture Drive. These are people that are traveling to that Walmart on a monthly basis to buy their goods and services, or to buy their goods from Walmart, and that are already inside your border spending money. So what we want to do is capture more of those tax revenue inside those borders. Next slide. This is another kind of data point here, a peer analysis. This is not actually off Ottumwa. The last slide I did run off Ottumwa. This is just kind of a hypothetical, but we're going to run in a community similar to yours, and we're going to say, how many general merchandise stores, how many quick service restaurants, how many sit-down restaurants, how many gas stations do these communities have? Compare it to yours and say, what brands are they? Why not Ottumwa for these brands? So why are they in this city that's similar size that's not here? These are all, these good data points that kind of bring us into step 2. Next slide. So I'm looking at a slide now that says real estate analysis. This is where we really think the deal gets made. Next slide. So beyond just the data, you know, the retailers are looking for a lot of different things, and we know the things that we're looking for. So instead of, you know, we want to be able to go to the retailers, instead of saying, why not Ottumwa? We want to say, why not this specific site in Ottumwa, where we've spoken to the landowner, we've spoken to a developer, we've spoken to the broker. We can negotiate these rent terms. We already know there's not a lot like in the market. We can demonstrate there's a leakage. We want to get them 80, 90% of the deal done, so it makes them a lot harder to just brush it off. And so since we've been doing this so long and we've been placing so many of them, we got to the point now where we're kind of a trusted resource in the market for someone to come in and say, hey, listen, this is a good idea to build a store here. Next slide. So our partnership, you know, we take the data, the real estate, and move on to step 3, which is basically just the labor. Constantly calling on retailers and try to place them in specific retail sites in your market. Maintaining a really good communication with the city and with the Economic Development Board and the people involved with that there, and saying, hey, what's going on there? What businesses are healthy or not healthy or perhaps might close? What are people clamoring for in the city? What do you hear people think, you know, that people want more of? A good communication from our end is just important for us to receive communication from your end. So it's really important that we communicate well with each other and try our best to land some retail, retail inside your border. Next slide. So I'm looking at the one for deliverables. Beyond this, the labor, we're going to give you a full recruitment plan. It's about 90 pages long and talk exactly about how we're going to go after these specific brands, which brands they're going to be, what they're looking for. And then we actually do that plan. So you can watch us work through that plan and we'll be doing our efforts very regularly. What's going on? Hey, listen, we have someone who might be interested in this place. Hey, we're looking at this old building. Do you know who owns it? Do you know what there's a story behind it? Delivering that plan to you, market analysis. So not only that, but you're going to get the data of all the traffic counts, the mobile data that I talked about, a tapestry segmentation, and a marketing guide that you can hang on to in case somebody comes in there to your town and wants to look up something about placing, whether it's retail or anything else. We hand that off to you kind of as a client. Next slide. Part 2 of our engagement we have proposed is a downtown revitalization program. Next slide. And our process here, it kind of operates the same way, doing the data work, connecting it with some real estate sites, and then kind of sending you on your way to helping to build a healthier, more robust downtown. Next slide. I'm looking at a slide that says 5 pillars. This is this operates a little bit differently. It's still kind of based a lot on the data and then the real estate, but we are handing you a full downtown plan for you all to implement. And we're a little bit different. People kind of think of this in terms of a master plan. We're different from a master plan because we are offering you a plan that with actionable items between years 0 and 2 with no money spent. A lot of these things are going to be policy administration, policy improvements you could make, tourism events you could do, some other, code-based things you can implement to kind of change the way downtown looks and improvement. And then we're going to offer some suggestions maybe between years 2 and 4 with a little bit of investment. And then between, years 4 and beyond with more investment that you probably need to start planning for or thinking about. And we just give you, we hand it off to you with a way to say, hey, listen, you could go with this and find a way to kind of get you on the right foot towards really having a more vibrant downtown. Next slide. This is a walkability assessment we ran. 80 in a Midwest town is a really great place to start. So you already have a pretty good walkability assessment, and we want to capitalize on that. We want to have businesses downtown that people can walk to a gift shop and then walk to a coffee shop and then go get lunch and meet people and want to be downtown. So we're offering up kind of strategic initiatives for that. Next slide. Strategic visioning workshop is another important part. So when we're in your market, we want to hold a workshop that we open it to the public. We want to ask them questions about what they think. And honestly, sometimes these are These are questions that people end up telling us that they wouldn't just stand for the council meeting and talk about. They want to come in and we'll ask them questions. So, okay, well, we want to take all these things together and make it a part of our plan when we're coming and visiting in the market. While we're there, we want to walk around and take a look at buildings and take an inventory of your real estate and say, okay, well, we want to understand what the history of these buildings are and how new businesses here can interface with the existing business, and meet with local downtown business owners and talk about what they want to see. Next slide. So these are just some of the deliverables you're going to get, and you can read some of the reasons or some of the things that it includes from a tourism perspective and an existing business and policy perspective. Next slide. This is just a zoning improvement. It's kind of an example of a city we engaged with in Mississippi when they switched from a code to a form-based code, and how they've kind of improved some other things. The next slide is another example of that. Next slide, I'm looking at one that says partnership timeline. This is kind of what you can expect from the downtown perspective. When we're going to start working on our data from the strategic visioning tour, and then when we present the downtown plan to you to kind of walk with. Next slide, as a quick kind of overview of our company, we keep a 5 to 1 client to staff ratio. So we don't have a million clients that, we just kind of put on the back burner. We form a really good relationship with our clients. We have about 35 people in the company. And I think 25 of them have licensed real estate agents. So we kind of speak retail, and we've made real estate really our business in part of doing the deal. Next slide. Our relationships, like I said, I'm at a conference right now. In 4 weeks, we'll be at ICSC Midwest in Chicago, doing deals with retailers, putting sites in front of them from our clients. We'd love to have Ottumwa there at that point to start having people get interest in the market. Next slide for questions, and I'm having a hard time hearing, so if someone has to repeat, take any questions at this time if you have any.
Zach, I've got a question. You got to ask him, tell him that he talked a lot about retail development in the downtown area, but this also would include working with the mall owner to try and get Quincy Place Mall revitalized as well, correct? This isn't
if
just
someone's
downtown.
talking, I can't hear it. I'm sorry. Could someone get maybe close to the phone and repeat it?
Yeah, I'm going to repeat the question, John. The question from the mayor was, you talked a lot about downtown, but this is a general community-wide program. Specifically, you'd be looking at, for example, the mall and the Quincy Place district.
Yeah. So when we did an initial look at this market, I think our first interest is that there's some vacancy over on the west side of town. And forgive me, I'm not looking at a map right now, but over, and I believe it faces to the west, and it's like an L-shaped. Maybe it was an old Hirschberger's or something. Those are definite redevelopment opportunities. We've got a lot of contacts in real estate that are really into to redevelopment opportunities right now. Yes, the mall is absolutely a place we look at. That's a very common question from any town that we deal with, filling mall vacancies. But to answer your question, the downtown is one part and the national retail is the other part. So any place in town, we could find a good real estate site is someplace we're interested in putting a retail store there.
Does council have any questions for John?
So I guess I would just ask how, I guess I want to say turnaround, but I don't know if that's the correct answer. So I understand that this is a 3-year contract or agreement, but so when should the city of Ottumwa, should we go forward with this, expect to start seeing some of those results? So, the first year is for developing that plan. And so what is that kind of timeline broken down into?
Did you get that, John?
I think I got enough to understand it. So we asked for a 3-year engagement for a couple of reasons, mainly just to set the expectation that real estate takes time. If we were to open a Dunkin' Donuts, to sign a deal for a Dunkin' Donuts tomorrow, there's a good chance it wouldn't be built in a year, particularly in this climate. So we want to let you know that these things take time, but we will be proving our efforts to you through our notes in base camp, through our conversations. Ottumwa is actually a little bit different in terms of our normal engagement. We usually take about 90 days to get to the market In this case, we want to do it within the next couple of weeks so we can have those sites noted and ready to go to bring to ICSC Chicago. It's only once a year, and it's October 20th this year. So we'd love to get there before that and bring it to this deal-making conference, which is, kind of what this is for. So we can begin sitting down and start pointing out the sites immediately for redevelopment. So in this case, you can actually expect that we move a lot quicker because we're kind of in a time crunch up against ICSC. So typically we do data work for the first 90 days. We will continue that work, but we want to get there earlier to do the real estate work now so we can get there before ICSC. And then after that data work, while we're in the market doing that, we'll be meeting with our points of contact there, whoever that may be. We'll try to set meetings with a couple commercial real estate agents so we can try to get a kind of a better picture of what their view of the market is, from the experts, and then take that and start the deal making process. Does that answer the question? I didn't hear all of it. I'm sorry.
It did. Thank you.
Any other questions for John?
I don't have any questions. I do have a couple of comments, though. In looking at where we are as a community, where we have been as a community and where we need to be as a community, I think that the really big picture thing that we need to be looking at here is Retail Strategies does have expertise in areas that no other person in this town has. And I think before anybody gets hung up on downtown, because he did mention downtown, downtown is just the one district that has a name attached to it that everybody recognizes. There's 6 major districts in the city of Ottumwa as far as retail goes. And obviously he said downtown because downtown has a name to it, but we do have 5 other districts, one of which has been struggling, not to anybody inside the community's lack of trying. It's not owned by somebody here in the community. And quite honestly, those people are folks that we don't have access to on a daily basis because they're people in New York, they're people in LA, they're people in Miami, they're people in Paris, wherever those people might be. We don't have access to those people. Zach and I had the pleasure of going out and trying to talk about Ottumwa in Las Vegas a few months ago. And while we were able to make connections, we were just 2 guys from Ottumwa, Iowa, and our weight didn't mean too much out in Las Vegas. Whereas these folks here, they have weight, they have those connections built, they have trust built with these retailers already. That's something that in a lifetime of Zach and I, we can't accomplish from sitting here in our desks here in Ottumwa, Iowa. When we look at the growth of the city of Ottumwa over the next few years, one of the things that's really important for us to look at is return on investment. And how do we get the return on investment on a contract like this? That's through local option sales tax dollars, people coming into the community, not only buying products from that store here, but it might be at Quincy Place Mall, so they might visit other stores while they're here. All of those dollars add up. And quite frankly, from a quality of life perspective, it keeps the dollars from the people here that are going out of town possibly from leaking into Des Moines market or to the Iowa City market. So, while we're dealing in hypotheticals at this point, it's very easy to say that if they got to shoot for the moon here for just a second, they get a Chick-fil-A to Ottumwa, which, nationally we know how much money they make at each one of their locations. We could pay for this entire contract in the first year of operation. And then any business they get past that is gravy for the city of Ottumwa, which again helps not only build the revenue base of Ottumwa through sales tax, through property tax, but additionally helps that quality of life that we have struggled to maintain over the last few years. And I guess lastly, I'll say, one of the things that the city of Ottumwa has said for years is that we are the retail hub of Southeast Iowa. And as a city, we have failed to act like we're the retail hub of Southeast Iowa for the last several years. The economy hasn't helped, but we haven't done a great job of going out and seeking new retail ventures. And that's to no fault of anybody. Again, I don't know that anybody in this community now or in the last 20 years has had that specific skill set or those specific connections to make that. But if we want to maintain ourselves as the retail hub of Southeast Iowa, and we want to grow the community, and we want to have quality of life for the community, this is something that's absolutely necessary for this community. This is something that if we don't have it, the chances of us getting, as Mayor Johnson has pointed out to me, on no less than 472.5 times, there's no chance of us getting a target back if we don't have someone in our corner to help us through that process.
I don't have a question, but I got a comment too. My wife had a business downtown for 5 years, and the struggle we had, and a lot of other businesses have, is we just can't get people to come downtown. Fred Zeziger and all them different committees work really, really hard, and I'm sure Mark works hard at what he's supposed to do. But pre-COVID, when we'd have ladies' night out, this is just an example, we'd have 1,000 to 1,200 ladies come down for one night, and we wouldn't see hardly any of them at the end of the year. And even though downtown looks really nice and they spent a lot of money down there and worked hard to do that, it didn't generate any more people to go down there and shop. So we was forced to close our shop. And like, I'm not mad at anybody. My wife's not upset with anybody, but we can't compete with online shopping. And as far as Target goes, this is just my opinion. The reason them big stores are closing because of online shopping. So we've been putting thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in the downtown ever since Walmart came to town. So I just think that, I don't know what the answer is, but it's not keep putting money in the town if you're not going to bring the people downtown to shop, get them to go downtown to shop.
Okay, well, this item is on the agenda later for consideration and potential vote. Thank you, Council, for accommodating. I believe John is traveling, which is why we try to get him towards the top of the meeting. And that way, when we get to that point in the meeting, we don't have, we would be able to at least hear what the presentation was. So thank you for accommodating there. And that is all I had for my report tonight.
Hey, thank you all so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Okay, the next item is where I ask if there's anyone in the audience that wants to speak on any of tonight's agenda items. And I think we do have one individual that wants to speak when we get to that point of the agenda. Is there anybody else that also wants to speak on any agenda item tonight?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. I would like to speak on F1, and I think I'll obviously have the opportunity to speak on public hearing number 2. Thank you.
Which one? Which public hearing? We have more than one. Oh, okay.
Okay, next we have departmental recommendations.
Bid for John Deere 1600 wide area mower for Parks Department. Recommendation, accept the bid for a John Deere 1600 turbo wide area mower from Sinclair John Deere for the Parks Department in the amount of $70,000.98.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, Gene, I believe you're going to take this.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. The city of Ottumwa has received a bid from Sinclair John Deere of Ottumwa for a John Deere 1600 turbo wide area mower for $70,019.18. The bid was obtained from the state of Iowa bid program, which means the state has already done the bidding process for the city. Purchase of the mower was approved by the City of Ottumwa Fleet Committee. The mower will replace mower number 209, which will be sold at the next City of Ottumwa online auction. An evaluation of mower number 209 is attached. There was $65,000 budgeted for the purchase of this mower, or $136,000 budgeted for the purchase of the mower and a new tool truck for the Parks Department. The new mower will be used by seasonal parks employees.
Does council have any questions for Gene? If not, Chris will take the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Cavanis would like to speak on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council. I would like to just visit for a moment about this issue. It's a $70,000 investment. I don't know who's going to pay for it. I assume the city. But I would like to bring to your attention that this is the end of season. This could be delayed till spring if we wanted to search for funds to pay for it. And the maintenance on whatever mooring we're using now could easily be cared for to get us through end of season. I just question all the dollars that are being spent and where they're going to come from. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Keith. Any other questions for Gene?
Gene, I'm assuming this went through Fleet Committee.
Yes, it did.
Okay, can you give us the details for the Fleet Committee recommendation on this?
Well, this is replacing mower number 209, which is 5 years old. And once the mowers get to this point, the repair costs start to increase drastically. Right now, 209 is in the shop again. Broken down, we can't mow with it. And so we're down a mower. The reason we're buying this now is because the money is budgeted. I've waited 4 months to get a bid on this mower. Now we finally have a bid. And it's because of supply chain problems. That's why the cost has gone up. And that's why I suddenly got an email a couple weeks ago with this bid, and we have to act on it now. We can't delay it till spring because there might not be mowers available to purchase in the spring.
And Gene, as I'm looking at this, as it was posted on the city's website, we're actually getting a substantial discount on this mower, correct? Like
Yes,
a $20,000 discount on this mower to buy it now?
That's correct. We're getting the city government discount.
Thank you.
This, whether it's purchased now or in the spring, that's still the same fiscal year for us.
Yeah.
So there's no difference as far as that would be concerned in one budget versus the other.
However, the cost could increase or it won't be available is what I'm hearing, supply chain demand.
Correct.
Both of those things are very possible, yes.
Any other questions for Gene? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Replacement of flow monitors for water pollution control facility. Recommendation: approve the replacement of two FL 1500 flow logger at $5,367 each and two AV 9000S analyzer modules at $806.40 each, totaling $12,346.87.
Do we have a motion for that recommendation?
Move the recommendation is presented.
Second.
Larry, I believe you're going to discuss this.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is to replace flow metering equipment at 2 of the 10 CSO overflow stations. The flow meters are over 20 years old and they are failing. The equipment is used to determine flows during rain events and determine how much stormwater is coming into the system. These flows are required by the Department of Natural Resources and our reporting process on monthly and annual reports.
Does council have any questions for Larry? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Thanks, Larry.
Consideration of first addendum to real estate purchase agreement by and between the City of Ottumwa and the Wapello County Historical Society. Recommendation, adopt the first addendum to the real estate purchase agreement.
Do we have a motion for the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
And Phil, I believe you're going to address this.
Yeah, thank you. So earlier this year, July 5th, council adopted a resolution regarding the purchase of the depot from Iowa Heartland History Connection. Anticipated closing date for that was set to be August 17th. Part of the acquisition, an abstract was ordered for completion prior to closing. We have not yet received that document, and upon advice of legal counsel, requesting to postpone the closing until that document can be reviewed. This attached addendum to the purchase agreement moves that closing date to a time 10 days following receipt of the abstract, not later than October 5th. We're hoping that we would have that abstract by that time frame. It was submitted to IHHC. They have signed off on it, and it's now presented to council for official action.
Council have any questions for Phil?
They didn't give you an expected date on the abstract at all.
No, it sounds like the title company is just, we've had several of these where abstracts have they've taken longer than they normally do. So for future acquisitions, we'll look to just automatically put it out there. But we should have had it, technically we would have had it much earlier than this, the August 17th, we were thinking. So I would hope that even this week yet, we would receive it.
It's hard to do the title opinion when you don't have an updated abstract.
That's right.
Absolutely.
If there's no other questions for Phil, then Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Authorize the city administrator to solicit requests for proposals regarding legal services related to prosecution. Recommendation, authorize the city administrator to proceed with issuing RFPs related to prosecutory legal services for the city of Ottumwa.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Phil, I believe you're going to take this also.
Yes. So recently, there's some staff changeover at Allers and Cooney, and they had reached out to us to see if we might be able to identify somebody to do the prosecution services for the city. They would still do the general legal and labor law, contractual law, things like that for us. But having somebody more local may be beneficial for the prosecution, meeting with the magistrates, meeting with individuals, working with the police chief, working with code enforcement for any kind of things like that. We had that set up initially that there was some, if there were conflicts of interest or things like that, gave authority to my office to seek other legal counsel. But because this would be a regular basis, I think it'd be best to maybe look at an RFP process for specifically the prosecutory or legal aspect, and request to move forward with that process.
So for the benefit of the public, do you want to briefly explain what an RFP is?
I'm sorry, yes, a request for proposal. So we would look to set up the parameters, the qualifications that we'd look at for the agreement, and submit that out to legal firms that could take care of prosecution on behalf of the city. They would respond to those, and then look to probably have the police chief and the community development director sit in on narrowing down the field to, if we get multiple applications in or requests in on that. Allers did say that they would still be available as needed if there was conflict of interest issues, things like that, to handle prosecution for us. But on a regular basis would like us to see if we could find somebody else to serve that role.
Does council have any questions for Phil?
Are we going to try to gear that RFP for local first before we look outside of Ottumwa, or is that kind of a field that is more for a bigger firm like in a Des Moines? I guess I don't know.
No, there isn't anything to that. One of the benefits, and I think that's maybe why that was looked at before, with having somebody local, if there's more trips to the courthouse, if we can't, I think they were able to structure things with the magistrates and judges to come like 1 day a week, so they weren't having to come on a regular, every day type thing as things come up. Having somebody more local frees that up a little bit. So I think that's something that we'd look at as part of the scoring process, but wouldn't solicit that be a final decider.
Any other questions for Phil? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the disposal of city-owned property described as Lot 12 in Mahan and Phillips addition to the city of Ottumwa, Wapello County, Iowa, commonly known as 902 North Jefferson Street.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and I think, Zach, you're going to present on this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Mahaska Communications Group has offered the city $500 for the vacant lot at 902 North Jefferson. This is the amount that the lot would be priced at under the vacant lot policy. They intend to construct a permanent equipment that would support a citywide broadband utility program, which will deliver fiber directly to the home. This resolution would authorize that sale. We've ordered an abstract. They'd review that abstract, and we'd close the sale on or before November 15th.
Is that vacant lot across from the old BP on Jefferson?
I believe so. I think there's a map in the packet here.
It's on the corner of Lincoln and
Lincoln and-
Jefferson Street.
Yep.
So it's between
Further
the
north.
old BP and the new BP, about midway.
Council have any questions for Zach? Does anyone in the audience have any questions they'd like to ask, since this is a public hearing? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Resolution number 223, 2022, accepting the offer and approving the sale of city-owned property located at 902 North Jefferson Street to Mahaska Communications Group for $500. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 223, 2022.
Is there a motion for the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the proposed ordinance repealing ordinance number 2888-2000 and granting to Mid-American Energy Company, its successors, and assigns the right and non-exclusive franchise to acquire, construct, erect, maintain, and operate in the city of Ottumwa, Iowa, a natural gas system, and to furnish and sell natural gas to the city and its inhabitants, and authorizing the city to collect franchise fees for a period of 25 years.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and I believe Phil's going to present on this.
Certainly. So on July 19th of this year, City Council held a public hearing regarding franchise fee for this very thing. At that same meeting, had approved a revenue purpose statement, and the item was subsequently defeated at that meeting. When I was interviewing back in January of 2020, I was aware the city was under some difficult financial strains. It was not until, bless you, it was not until I began working a month or two later that I came to realize how serious that issue was. I've said it before, and I'll say it again here, not as a scare tactic or embellishment, but as a testament to the situation. If a municipality is to the point they're reducing the staffing levels of police or fire, they have exhausted all other avenues. Prior budgets had reduced services and eliminated staff across various departments, forced more personnel costs into other tax levies, deferred some capital improvements, and moved other disposable capital into the debt service levy. Prior budgets had pulled out all the stops, all except one the city had available: the ability to institute a franchise fee. Franchise fees were brought to my attention at that time. However, I did not know enough about them and how they would affect the city. I only knew they would be viewed as another tax on residents and business. I also knew that Ottumwa had one of the highest tax levies in the state of Iowa. Although the user fee is calculated in a similar fashion to a sales tax, unlike taxes, it applies to all the properties within the city of Ottumwa that uses gas or electric. Well, since that first budget, we've been working to reduce the tax rate to help offset the burden by an extra $1 or so per week that people might pay for franchise fees if it were to be approved. Well, earlier this year, at the budget meeting and a couple different city council meetings, I had suggested that it would now be time to consider these fees to bolster the general fund and to reinvest in the community to kickstart growth and development. Although the tax levy is trending in the right direction, timing regarding the economy was not beneficial, and the council voted to table the electric franchise and reject the gas at that meeting. While I support the decision from the couple months ago, I am respectfully requesting the council to reconsider its position on the gas franchise fee and to take up consideration of the electric franchise fee. When the budget was approved earlier this year, it was done with incremental financial support from the general fund balance. It was also completed prior to the effects of inflation, which city government is not immune from feeling that impact. The process of implementing franchise fees can take anywhere from 4 to 6 months from start to finish. And it would be beneficial to know that revenue is coming in before the end of the year to avoid further depleting the fund balance and potentially putting the bond rating in jeopardy. Additionally, identifying the status of this potential revenue source now would benefit the future budget by identifying opportunities to reduce that debt service, increase growth, provide financial sustainability, and further lower the tax rate. Thank you.
Does council have any questions for Phil?
Probably open
Didn't we have?
Yeah, we have 2 individuals that want to speak on this. So Jerry, do you want to come up first and give your name and address?
My name's Jerry Parker, 919 East 4th Street. A few months ago, I was at a seminar put in by the Ehlers Law Firm. Phil was there. And I'll tell you one of the things that we heard at that time. From February of 21 to February of 22, energy costs rose 26%. From February of 21 to March of 22, they went up 31%. It's not just a tax on the people, that's a tax on the businesses here. The businesses that are struggling. You just saw a presentation about trying to bring business here. And we're going to tell them we're going to increase their costs before they even get here. Some of you have probably heard this story before. We were trying to stop Alliant from a big increase a few years ago. And we gave presentations, and I teamed up with the plant manager of John Deere, and I gave a presentation on how it affected people. He gave it on how it affected business. What he said at the time was if he could pick up the John Deere plant and set it 26 miles from here in Oskaloosa, he would save $650,000 a year in utilities. Now, we know that's not going to happen. They're not going to pick up John Deere or any plant and move it to Oskaloosa. But there are businesses and industries that are moving every day. What are we going to have them do? Look at Ottumwa and say, whoops, let's go just 26 miles farther and we'll save all this money on utility costs. That's before the implementation of the franchise fee. A few years ago, the city, the county, the business leaders, utility companies, we got together and we courted a Swedish firm. Wapello County was going to give them land at the county home, free land. We got a grant to pave the road in front of their plant. We made it down to the final 2. And that day we were very optimistic, free land and paving the road, but they had one more stop. The second place they looked at, and they got on their bus and went on to Nebraska. Well, needless to say, we lost. So we called them and congratulated them on picking a site that they were comfortable with. But we said, now help us, will you? Next time we get this opportunity, help us. What can we do better? And he said, nothing, Jerry. What happens is going to Alliance, Nebraska, we save $2 million a year in utilities. You're going the wrong direction. If you're courting business and courting industry and tell them before they get here, we're going to raise your taxes. And this is just 3% now on gas, but on the next item here, you're making it an opportunity for electricity. I think that you'll find in the near future, you're going to have similar financial situations that you think you can address. And so what you're going to do is add more, maybe 4% or 5%, or maybe since you're taking your next step on item 3 and talking about electricity, that'll be out of the way. We probably won't have these opportunities to address you again. You know, if you're going to have economic development, the way to do it is you make an atmosphere that's conducive to development. A plant doesn't leave just because they like another town. They will leave because they will make more money there. You know, why is John Deere taking part of their business to somewhere else? It's not because they'll lose more money there. They'll have an opportunity to make more money there. If you increase this and create this opportunity, and I'm talking mostly about business, but we handle general assistance through the county. That's to help people pay utility bills, rent, and things like that that they can't afford. Folks, you're going in the wrong direction. We can call it whatever you want, franchise fee, it's a tax. Now, is it 2 or 3%? That doesn't sound too bad, but let's add it on top of 17, 18% for groceries. Let's add it on to what gasoline is. Let's add it on to the other things I mentioned earlier. And now that 2 or 3% is a killer. We've all heard the straw that broke the camel's back. I think you're going the wrong direction if you're trying to increase economic development here. And I just ask you to think about those people that are not as well off as the rest of us. They struggle to pay a utility bill, and we're going to make it worse. I don't think that's what we were put in office for. Thank you.
So Jerry, I have a question I guess I'd like to ask you. And you might be familiar with part of this. I don't know if you're familiar with all of it. Explain to me what happened then, why Pioneer, Cargill, and Angimoto, and Vacher wanted to be in Wapello County, and they didn't end up coming to Wapello County. Why was that?
Sure, I can tell you. I wasn't in office then, but I can tell you. On Pioneer, they went right to the site they wanted. The person, when they said they were going to locate in Wapello County, they weren't going to locate in Wapello County. Where they wanted is right at the intersection of the highways where they were. But that was a scare tactic to get the price lowered. The county at that time, and I wasn't in any office then, but what they did was they scheduled a meeting of their zoning board to change whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted it. But the person selling them the land out there where they are now lowered the price at that time, so they got what they wanted. They wanted right at the intersection of the highway. And as far as Ajinomoto or them, they went where they already had existing facilities. If you look at the old ISU, I think it was ISU plants, they went right where they went. John Neen, who's not with us anymore, he went with another person right to the governor's door that night and said, hey, they want to move. We have the good place for them. Now, we right now are working to get Cargill on the Wapello County side because we own the Bioprocessing Training Center. And if you'll know, all of their footprint is over in the other county. And you know they pay more in taxes in that county than they do here. So if they could pick their plan up and move it here as of today, they would save a lot of money coming here. But what we're doing is trying to get them, and the deal should be made public any day. We're going to be selling them the Bioprocessing Training Center so they can make it a finance place. What we're doing is getting their footprint in Wapello County. But those things you mentioned, they weren't that they wanted to come here and anybody chased them out. That wasn't the case. If you're looking at taxes, you can compare the taxes, and we did, when we were looking at the bioprocessing training center. By them locating that whole Cargill situation, they just save about $500,000 in property taxes in a year. So it wasn't property taxes. But when people hear those things and don't hear the stuff behind the scenes that really happen, they get a false impression of why things happen.
Does council have any questions they'd like to ask Jerry? Okay, thanks, Jerry. Next, Mr. Cavanis.
Keith Cavanis, 2851 Oak Meadow Drive. Council, Mr. Mayor, I speak before you tonight encouraging that you do something that I believe Ms. Galloway spoke of a couple months ago. She said, we don't have a finance director. We really shouldn't be jumping off this bridge till we know how deep the water is. And I got to tell you, that's a very intelligent thought. And that was well taken. I think several people thought that was very intelligent. I did personally. The interesting thing that I go back to continually is that this city has no clue what its budget is because it doesn't start with a zero-based budget. Zero-based budget starts from zero and goes up. If somebody tells you, well, you're at the point where you don't have any authority anymore because all that's spoken for, baloney. You are responsible for the total budget. So whenever the city wants to get around to starting to work with a finance director to build a zero-based budget, you will find money that you didn't even know you had, and you will find opportunities to spend some additional money that you can be confident that it exists. There's no possible way that you can assess our citizens or businesses 3 or 5% on their utility bills on top of what they're already paying because they can't pay it. You can just do whatever you want to do, but if the bill comes in and the check doesn't follow, it's because they don't have the money. We are, as I mentioned before in the meeting previous, 33 to 35% retired people in this community living on Social Security or whatever reserve finances they have. I don't know what your electric bill is or gas bill, but I can tell you that if in the last 2 months I had not received an electric bill for $420 one month, $440 the next month, and you can put 3% or 5% on that if you like. But I can tell you in the wintertime, the gas bill turns around and does the same thing. It's because all of their rates have doubled and in some cases tripled. This contract that you are considering is for 25 years. That's some people's lifetime. That's not a short period of time. Some of you will come and go before that contract has ever been concluded. So I urge you to consider what you're doing. Urge the administrator to find a finance director who knows what they're doing and go through the budget and can show you what a zero-based budget looks like. Then I think you will have confidence in what you're doing. Thank you very much. I'm happy for you to have listened. And thank you, Your Honor, for the comment.
Keith, I just have one question, and
Sure.
I'm going to try to be argumentative when I ask you this.
Oh.
Did you bring this up yourself when you were on the city council about the city adopting a zero-based budget?
We discussed it, but we never found anybody that thought it was worthwhile because it's a lot of work. When you start from zero, you start from zero. And as you start to spend money, you build on that zero budget. It's too much easier just to say, well, 93% of it's already spoke for, so you got a 7% input. It doesn't work at all. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel.
Is there Couple of quick responses to the comments there and.
Got somebody else.
Oh, like to speak?
Did you want to speak, Dennis? I do. Okay. Go ahead and come up and give us your name
Red
and
light.
address.
I didn't expect to speak tonight. Excuse my speaking voice. I'm Dennis Wilhoit, 335 East 5th Street. And I just want to speak in favor of the franchise fee. I think you need to hear that there are citizens that understand the explanation, the detailed explanation that the city administrator gave several months ago. We understand that our fire department is understaffed. We understand that the police department is understaffed, and we're concerned about safety in this town. And we also know that we've seen the reduction in that staff, and we know that there could be more coming. And as a property owner, David and I own several properties in town. We also own 2 businesses. I run a nonprofit that cares for a building. And I can assure you that we, as business owners, understand that sometimes you have to bite the bullet in order to have security, in order to have safety, and in order to make your town grow. And we can see daily that our town is suffering and doesn't have enough staff of many different kinds, including policing and fire department. So I would encourage you to, yes, consider it very thoughtfully and not forget that there are those of us, again, business owners, people who run nonprofit organization, members who sit on those boards that understand that their utility bill will have a franchise fee, and that we welcome that because we know we have to bite the bullet, step up to the plate, and encourage growth in this town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. Phil, did you have some comments you want to make?
Just real quick, I just wanted to briefly mention that I agree that utility rates are one of the things that people looking to move or build in the community would look at. One of the other big things that they look at, which is usually first and foremost, is the tax rate. And we have been historically one of the highest municipal tax rates in the state of Iowa. Going into last year, we were number 5. I am pleased to say that with the dollar reduction that we had this last year, we have dropped down 10 spots. We're now 15 and look to continue to do that. So that is something that we see is that investment into the community, being able to continue to lower that, pulling back some of those things that were pushed from the general fund into trust and agency to make the budget meet the dollars that it needed to be able to pay for the benefits and the staffing levels that we currently have. And look to continue to have. And so I just wanted to say that there has been a lot of thought going into this going forward. And there have been a number of finance directors and others that have looked at this issue in the past across many communities in the state and have seen this as a viable option to help supplement the general fund. So, thank you.
Okay. We need to take the roll.
Does council want to make any?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So a little bit of an analogy here. If you're at home and you notice a pipe dripping and you say, I'll get that later. At some point that drip's going to become bigger. And we just look at it and say, it's not doing any real damage. So we'll just let that go for a little while. Pretty soon that pipe's going to bust. And, but then, the pipes burst and water's going all over the floor. And we say, well, I'll just mop it up really quick. I've got things to do, so I'm just going to mop it up. I'll get that pipe later. And then before you know it, the floors are ruined. And now you have to not only replace the leaked pipe, but you have to pay for more water usage than what you were than what you ever had to pay for realistically. And then you got to replace a floor. I say all of that because Ottumwa, looking back, unfortunately, the leadership of the city of Ottumwa, Wapello County, the state of Iowa, and the federal government has had a long history of kicking the can down the road, so to speak. I think that former councilperson Cavanis said it perfectly clearly up here, that he had fellow council members, and I applaud you, because as an accountant, I believe in zero-based budgeting also. But you also had 4 other council people with you that kicked the can down the road, much like 50 years worth of predecessors. I look at what happened in 1974 in the city of Ottumwa when the EPA came and said, we need to do sewer separations. City of Ottumwa at that point said, nah, we don't need to do anything about that. We'll just kick that can down the road. I'm going to say kick the can down the road a lot, so I apologize in advance. What happens? 1999 comes along, and the federal government comes in and says, nope, not doing that anymore. Guess what happened between 1974 and 1999? The cost of materials went up 400%. You can look that up on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. So in 1999, the city took it very seriously, but it still took them till 2006 to actually start working on it. And now, because of the EPA mandates that are in place, we have just a handful of years to completely finish redoing the sewer separation. And how many roads have, as an opportunity cost, how many roads have we not been able to fix in this city because the city leadership at the time decided it's not important enough now to look at this, so we're going to kick the can down the road. And then starting in 2006, every single road that the city did replace cost them 400% more to do than it did in 1974 when they were initially told that they had to do it. But it didn't matter because they weren't around to blame. That city leadership wasn't here. And even if they were here, they certainly weren't in power at that point. Speaking of 4s, I'm interested when and again, as accountant, I look at cash flows pretty regularly, and I think about the compounding effect of cash flows. And I'm taken back to right after I first came onto city council. There was an article that came out in the newspaper on April 17th of 2017 where County Assessor Smith said that county taxes the county property tax valuation hadn't been done countywide for over 35 years, which rolling taxes, that was a lot of money, not only from the city that the city didn't get over the course of 35 years, but we're talking about the county, we're talking about Indian Hills, we're talking about the Ottumwa School District. That's all cash that didn't come in the door for any of those taxing entities because the property tax valuation wasn't done in full for 35 years. If that's inaccurate, well, then the Courier posted several inaccurate articles on that. From the state level, several years ago, they decided to start rolling back commercial property taxes to the state. Looks great from the state's perspective. Yay, we get a lower state lower state tax rates. We have this great budget surplus. Who does that come back on? That comes back on the communities like Ottumwa. All of a sudden, we have this big gaping hole in our general fund that we have to make up for somehow. And at the same time, they want to look like heroes and say we're doing something to help the common people. Then they cap the property tax at $8.10 for the general fund levy. So I say all of that to say we have done a lot of kicking the can down the road over the last 50 years. We're paying the price for that now. I said back in July, this will come back at some point. If it wasn't in July, it's today. If it's not today, it's 4 months down the road. If it's not 4 months down the road, it's some point in the future. We have, as of last month, again to Jerry and former councilperson Cavanis's point, we have 8.6% inflation. 3.35% inflation average every single year since 1974. Yet our property tax valuation has declined almost every single year since 1974. Now, our expenses are going up, our valuation is going down. What's that mean? The city has to do other things. We used to have 23, 28 parks employees. Now we have 5. We used to have a police department that's nearly double what it is today. We have a higher poverty rate. We have a higher crime rate. We have higher instances of mental health disturbances here in Wapello County, but we have half of the police department. We have almost half of the fire department we had back in 1974 to accommodate this increased public safety issue, this grouping of public safety issues. We have housing inventory where 86% of the housing inventory was built before 1979. But we have code enforcement that is at least half of the size that it was. Now, I live in Ottumwa. Everybody knows that clearly. I don't want to pay any higher utility bills. I got a notice just today that my utility rate's going to go up. But I also don't want to live in an unsafe community. I also don't want to give up on our community. I believe in this community. I love this community. And to sit here and say, we're going to kick the can down the road is to say, we're giving up. We're going to be apathetic. We're going to do what we've done for 50 years in this community, and we're going to be apathetic, and we're going to kick the can down the road. And I vehemently disagree with the idea that this somehow tampers economic development in the community. I would say that us kicking the can down the road, another 5 years, another 10 years, again, to Mr. Cavanagh's point, some of us won't be here in 25 years. Some of those people probably said that exact same thing 25 years ago, that we're not going to be here, so we're just going to kick that can down the road. The problem with that is there are other things that factor into that. When businesses look to come to a community, they want to make sure that they're going to a safe community. They want to make sure that they're going to a community that their children have proper education. They want to go to a community where not only the house that they're living in, but the houses around them are safe and secure and well maintained. And right now, it's no illusion to anybody that some of that stuff doesn't exist now, because we can't physically go out. Our complaints or our code enforcement is complaint driven because they can't go out and proactively do anything because they're too short staffed. Our streets department can't go out and do proper planning because they're short staffed, because we can't pay a competitive wage against the private contractors in the community. It's a real threat. That we might lose more public safety officers down the road. Maybe not next year, maybe not the year after that. And I said this at the last meeting too. You know, it's not that, you know, we're going to scare people into this. It's a reality. And we have to get away from scare tactics, and we have to get away from suppositions. This is very real, because costs, again, next year by union contracts, we are going to go up a minimum of 3% in our operating expenses next year. And the way that property build permits are going right now, we will go down again in revenues next year. So what are our options?
Jerry. Come on up to the microphone.
I didn't really have any intentions of speaking more, but after listening to Mr. Rowe and the false connotations he's putting out there, someone needs to present the other side. When we look back at 1974, were you involved in any of the offices back then?
No, I never claimed any of us were.
I was. We didn't kick the can down the road. We faced the Jefferson Park Viaduct was going to be closed. It wasn't safe to cross. Priority, we got to keep that open. So what did we do? Instead of working on the sewer, we closed the viaduct for a year and fixed it to where, what's it been, 40 years? Now you get to do it again in 40 years. The Jefferson Park drainage ditch, south of Mary Street, 1,000 homes there flooded every time we got a rain. Not when we got a flood, when we got a rain, just like we had the other day. You took rowboats down there. In 100 years, nobody corrected that. What did our administration do? No, let's don't kick it down the road. Let's address that. So we built the structures and those homes don't flood now. So don't give any kind of thoughts when you weren't even there. You don't even know what happened to say we kicked it down the road. Some of these things have to happen later. It's bad management when you try and scare people. We're going to lay off policemen if we don't do this. No, you won't.
But didn't you just do that with economic development a few minutes ago, Jerry?
I said what?
Didn't you just do that a few minutes ago with
No,
economic
you're going to
development?
lose economic development because they look at
But that's a threat,
costs.
right?
They
That's a
look
threat,
at costs,
right?
don't they?
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, if you're going to open a business, I think you look at costs.
Mhm.
I mean,
you also
maybe we
look
ought
at
to
public
ask them
safety.
why did different businesses leave here? If they could make money here, they're going to be here. But when you talk about what happened back then, you know, when you said we went 30 years without doing a new valuation, yep. Now you tell me when we did the reevaluation, which cost $1.3 million, how much did we gain in valuation?
Well, that was
I'm waiting
exactly
for you
my
to tell
point,
me.
Jerry. That was exactly my point.
Yeah, tell me how much we gained.
That was my point.
You mean you don't know how much we gained?
Well, it's in the Courier articles.
I'll bet what we gained is not in it because we didn't gain hardly anything.
But my point is it hadn't been taken care of. That was my point.
It wasn't taken care of. Did
I
we
mean,
gain? You said
quote the
cash
Courier.
lost. All of the cash lost to the city and county. We didn't lose anything. We didn't lose anything. Look at the new valuations when it was redone. What we're gaining valuations from now is not the fact that we reevaluate every other year. We're gaining because of sales. Sales is what's making the value go up. Not anything that we're doing, just sales. I just asked you to, when you say something, you know, tell the truth. Don't
I am
guess.
telling the truth. I quoted a newspaper article that was printed in the Ottumwa Courier.
Well, they said we were kicking it down the road from 1974. Could you show that to me?
The direct quote was that it hadn't
Right,
been done
wasn't
in
a direct
35
quote.
years.
And you weren't involved then, and I was. And we took care of the big things. And look at all the roads that we did concrete. The roads that we paved out of community development funds. We didn't kick that down the road. We addressed the number one priority at that time. That's what we did. Mm-hmm. And it's really false for you to act like those people, most of them are passed away now, to even put out there that they were kicking the can down the road. They were addressing the needs of the community at that time.
So how's that? Never mind.
I think, yeah, that's a good answer. Never mind.
Does anybody else have any comments they want to make before I ask for a motion to close the public hearing? Okay, Mr. Cavanis.
First of all, one of the things that Jerry is not mentioning, and rightfully so, is that if this goes into phase, the county, who is not going to have any part of it, will lose $170,000 a year. However, in talking with the council or the supervisors, guess what they said? You know, we've got a budget, we understand the budget, and we can make it work, even if you do cost us $170,000 a year. So bottom line is, as far as I'm concerned, don't let anybody scare you with, oh, we're going to fire everybody or not be able to hire anyone if we don't pass this resolution to put 3% or 5% or whatever it is, tax on your utility bills. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there any other final comments before I ask for a motion to close the public hearing? Russ?
So, you know, and we talked a little bit at the last meeting about all this stuff, and I don't like the idea of franchise fees. You know, I live in Ottumwa. I pay a utility bill. I'm going to have to pay this just like anybody else. But it's just like I've been saying this whole time. This isn't a matter of if we're going to do it. It's going to be when we have to do it. And right now we are looking at, we need 3 firefighters. I believe the police force still needs 2 more officers. You know, we need health department. We got to hire people. We got like tons of positions open. We got like 40 positions open right now, 15 open right now. And we've got to hire those positions. And some of those people are not taking those jobs because we can't pay enough. And we have a study coming back that'll be back hopefully sooner rather than later that's going to tell us that we're going to have to raise our wages. We don't have the money in the budget for it. It's been 2 months, just over 2 months since we first debated this. In that 2 months, I have heard nothing from any citizen about any other way for the city to get revenue except for the zero budget, except for that budget. Nobody's come to me and said, well, maybe you could do this. Maybe you could do that. Maybe you could do this. The only thing I've heard is, well, let's change the way we do our budget. Well, that's 7 months from now. That's not going to help us. That's not going to help us in 6 months or 5 months when we know we need to hire these officers. We know we need to hire these firefighters. We know we need code enforcement. That's not going to help us. So there's nothing that we can do other than franchise fees in my eyes, because I don't know. So, it's going to be sooner rather than later. We have to do this. We have rising costs. And to the point of not having a finance director yet, our city administrator has been through economics. He's MBA in economics. I can trust that. Has a lot more experience in economics than I do. So, it's sooner rather than later. The sooner we do this, the better off the city's going to be, the better off that we're going to be at getting people hired and getting those positions for safety filled that we need to fill.
The only other comment I guess I'd like to make for people to remember is, even though it's set up for a 25-year time frame, that doesn't have to be in effect for 25 years. The council could decide at any given year that they're going to do away with the franchise fees as property values continue to rise over the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully. And as we get more business and industry in this town to help pay their share of property taxes, I'm hopeful that at some point the franchise fees would no longer need to be kept in place. But just because it's set up initially on a 25-year time frame, you're not locked into it for 25 years. It can be terminated at any time. And I think people need to remember that.
We can also reduce that over time, but we cannot increase that without going through this whole process again. So we can reduce it to 2 and we can reduce it to 1. Keep in mind that 1% is already what you're paying, but we cannot increase it to 4 or 5 without going through this whole public hearing again, through the whole process over again.
All right, just real clarify, it's undergrad in economics, MPA, public administration. So it's
And
higher
can
degree
I-
than I got.
Can I clarify too? We can't actually eliminate the contract prior to the 25 years, correct? But we could reduce it to a 0.
So what you wouldn't want to reduce or eliminate the agreement itself because it has a bunch of other things in there, but you could reduce it to 0, as you mentioned, or a lesser number than that. And you're correct that we'd have to go through the whole process to increase. In fact, the electric one is a little bit different in the sense that we have one that I believe is set at 0%. So it's looking at increasing that to a higher percentage. And it would take that 2 to 3, 4 months to do any changes on the increase side, if that were ever needed. To the point, whether you use zero-based budgeting or anything else, and that was kind of to my comments, if we know that this is revenue as we're going into the budget process, that gives us that opportunity to look at that and potentially look to lower that property tax rate even further if this is revenue there. So whether it's reduced on the utility franchise fee, you reduced on the property tax levy, there's opportunities at that point, assuming that those dollars aren't needed in the day-to-day operations.
So I just have one comment. So I keep hearing about how, our electric prices are going up, which they are, and it's extremely difficult and frustrating. And I know Mr. Parker identified that, at one point they had gone to Alliant, I think is what you had said, to try to reduce. And maybe I misheard that, so I'm sorry. But I thought you mentioned up here that you had petitioned Alliant or talked with Alliant. Did I misunderstand that, Jerry? You're looking at me like I am. Okay. So anyways, but I think that we have a lot of strong people in here. We have leadership that maybe we all need to get together and really go to these like energy companies and have conversations. And I know it's not as easy as that sounds, but we all can agree on that at least. I think we can all agree that our energy costs are out of control. And again, I know it's not that easy, but I think that that is something that we can all agree on here too tonight.
I'd like to say something if I could, since everybody else says.
Go ahead, Doug.
just listening to everybody talk, I was at a meeting, went to a bunch of meetings as I was running and shortly after I ran. And one meeting, I just sat back and I didn't say nothing. And I'm typically a big time talker. And someone had asked me 3/4 of the way through the meeting. They said, Doug, you've been pretty quiet. What do you think? I said, well, you probably don't want to know what I think. I said, we have too many people, not enough money. That's what life is. That's why we're up here arguing and bickering like we're sixth graders. We all want to be right. And we're not. The problem lies, we're dancing around the general budget, general fund. We're dancing around it. And we've been dancing around it for a long time. I've said all along, I don't agree with paying a firm $117,000 out of a fund that everybody here is saying is about ready to go belly up. But we're going to take $117,000 out of there to have a firm come tell us what we've already discussed tonight. We know what the problem is. Why don't we hold people accountable that jacked up the general fund? That's what I think we should do. This firm that wants to come in to fix everything in all these businesses in town, they're not going to be able to do that. It's false hope. I have nothing against them, but they don't want no one to be a part of what they do. Well, you know how to solve Ottumwa's problems? There's 2 businesses in town that never come here and complain. They never come here and ask for a grant. They never try to be West Des Moines. They're 2 simple businesses. And anybody that grew up in Ottumwa and left, every time they come back to this town, they go to them 2 places. You want to know what they are? Graham's and Canteen. That's who we need to talk to. How are you guys doing this? How did you do it through recession after recession? How did you do it when the economy was horrible? How did you do it when the interest rates were so high? And you know what they're going to tell you? And I'm not a financial guy. They're going to tell you we kept it simple. We can talk and fight about money all we want to, but we, the people here, can fix Ottumwa. We got to go back to where the root of the problem is and work our way up like a zero budget. We have a new financial director getting ready to start. Why we're arguing about all this, why don't we give that person a chance? That's that person's job, is to figure all this stuff out. Because if we don't fix it, if we don't figure out what the problem is with the general fund, you guys can do this franchise fees all you want to, but all you're doing is putting more money into a problem that we're going to spend more money than what the franchise fees gave. Because that's what we've done in history.
Doug, the only thing I would say, and I don't want to be argumentative, the Canteen and Graham's has done the same thing as any other business has had to do over time, as they periodically have continued to raise the price of their products to deal with inflationary cost and the fact that the product costs them more to purchase even when they get it wholesale. So they've done the same thing as every other business. They've had to raise their rates. I mean, when I was in high school in the late 60s, canteens were 35 cents a piece. Now they're almost $4 a piece. Graham's ice cream has went up over the years too. You know, I mean, they've done the same thing as every other business has had to do over time. They've had to raise the price of their product. So I guess I'm not real sure what the analogy is that you're trying to make with those 2 businesses, because they've followed suit just like every other business. In order to survive, they've had to raise the rates.
The point I'm trying to make is that's who Ottumwa is. That's who we are.
Well, I'd like to think Ottumwa's more than the Canteen and Graham's.
I mean, but they're happy. They're successful.
Well, they are successful. We have a lot of other
why do
successful
people-
businesses too.
People keep going there and prices go up.
Right.
That's just who we are. We're downtown Ottumwa.
Jerry?
So I'm so sorry. I just have a quick question. Doug, the firm you're talking about was the one that was presenting today, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Retail strategies.
So yeah, that one is not being or asked to be paid out of the general fund. I think it's for
I
ARPA.
understand that.
Okay,
but
I
I'm
thought
just
that's what
saying-
you had
No, no,
identified, so I
no,
just
that's
wanted
not-
to clarify.
not what I
That's my misunderstanding. Sorry, Jerry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Phil, did you get done with your comments that you wanted to make?
I believe so.
Jerry, did you want to say one other comment? Can you come up here so people can hear you?
on your general conversation about not, this could go off. It might not have to be on for a long time. I just asked you, those of you that have not been involved that long, in 1954 or 55, you know what happened? Probably not. They put the sewer tax on. For how long? We're only going to need this 5 or 6 years. This is what, 2022? Do the math. Once this goes on, don't try and fool yourselves even. It's on and it's going to be there. You'll get used to it. It's going to be there. You won't be able to get rid of it.
Any other final comments from anybody? If not, I'd ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Ordinance number 3209, 2022, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 2888, 2000, and granting to Mid-American Energy Company, its successors, and assigns the right and non-exclusive franchise to acquire, construct, erect, maintain, and operate in the city of Ottumwa, Iowa, a natural gas system, and to furnish and sell natural gas to the city and its inhabitants, and authorizing the city to collect franchise fees for a period of 25 years. Recommendation passed the first consideration of ordinance number 3209, 2022.
Is there a motion to approve that recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
No.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Passes.
It passes.
The first reading does pass. This next item, I am asking if someone wants to make a motion to remove ordinance number 3202, 2022 from the table to discuss.
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
No.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance number 3202, 2022, an ordinance amending Appendix D, electricity franchise with Interstate Power and Light Company for the purpose of imposing a franchise fee. Recommendation passed the first consideration of ordinance number 3202, 2022.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, Phil, I believe you're going to rest in.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor, this is the item that was tabled from the July 19th meeting. It had a public hearing at that time and then was subsequently tabled. The revenue purpose statement was approved. That was Resolution 174-2022. And it is very much similar to the conversation that was just had, except this would be for the electric utility instead of the gas utility.
And I believe the revenue statements were identical for both, correct?
Correct. And the percentage, the 3% is identical. As was mentioned earlier, there is currently a 1% that goes to local option sales tax. This would replace that. So it's 2% additional impact on the utility.
Does council have any questions for Phil? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
No.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Okay, the first reading of the ordinance passes.
Resolution number 226, 2022, authorizing an agreement for professional design services between the City of Ottumwa and Design Workshop for Greater Ottumwa Park Phase 1 Tennis Facility Design. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 226, 2022.
Do we have a motion for that recommendation?
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Okay, Zach, I believe you're going to present on this.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. As part of the capital improvement plan, the city allocated $750,000 for a new tennis court project, which was matching a pledge from Ottumwa Schools of $750,000. The resolution for consideration today would approve an agreement with Design Workshop to create construction documents for the Greater Ottumwa Park Phase 1 tennis facility project. Design Workshop was selected by an RFQ to complete the Greater Ottumwa Park Master Plan and subsequent design work. The fee for this project would be, for the design work, would be $196,000, which is roughly 8% of what we estimate the final cost of the project to be. The construction documents that they would create as part of this project would be used to bid construction of the project as soon as October, but at least sometime this year for construction early next year. The construction documents would be for a full complex of 12 courts, including fencing, netting, lighting, stands, and support buildings. The project could be bid across multiple phases as determined by the council, but we want to have all the design work done so that we can parcel out the parts of the project that we want to do. It would be for post-tension concrete tennis facility. The final location of the tennis complex will be determined by the delivery of the master plan after the September 21st, 2022 public meeting, but they would be able to get started right away with doing some of that design work. And of course, that meeting is just tomorrow, so we're pretty close to wrapping up the master plan. That's all I have on this item.
Does council have any questions for Zach?
I do. So on here, I see what the city has allocated, and also what the school has allocated or pledged. So I know that the Friends of Ottumwa Park had also identified that they were going to raise some money too. So I'd like to know where we are with that. Or I said Ottumwa Schools, but I meant the Friends of Ottumwa Park.
Right. I think they're still involved in a capital program for raising funds, and I don't think that we're to a point where a full project would be able to be completed, but I do think that we're going to be at a point with the city and the school's investment and what they'd be able to put together that we should realistically be able to construct the 12 courts and the nets so that we can have the surface for playing tennis, and then we can build out support buildings and other things as future phases of a project.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And-
my next question, oh, sorry, Phil,
No,
did
was
I
gonna say,
interrupt?
I think you asked where they were in the fundraising
Yes.
process, and so I've been part of some of those meetings. There is a group that is actively meeting. Did kind of put it on hold a little bit. Some of the needs that they had that they felt to actively be able to fundraise for this project was the cost estimates, which is what this would deliver, and some renderings to know what it was going to look like in the end. So they knew what it was they were asking from people, and so they will continue to do that, and they were committed to that third of the project cost as well.
Okay. So my next question is so this first 196,000, correct? Will be we're asking the city to pay that too. So I remember in our conversation when we did approve this, we approved up to 750,000. So I just want to ensure that moving forward, if I want to ensure that the city is not fronting that $750,000 first without the other two entities also paying portions or splitting the cost with us. Because again, we said up to 750 and 750,000. And at this point, we're going to be paying this whole 100 or potentially this whole 196,000 out of that 750 up to 750.
Correct. This would not be a separate item. This is part of that 750. There was no cost sharing for this particular part of the project. No.
But it is also part of the total project cost. So we'd look at allocating that across appropriately as we're finalizing the project.
Yeah, I guess I guess the bottom line is the next part that were to come to the council, I would like to see how the school district and also the Friends of Ottumwa Parks, like how they're assisting with paying that. So if there's a price share on that too, I'd like to see that.
Any other questions for Zach?
Well, since Councilwoman Galloway stole
Can
my
you talk
question,
into the microphone?
since she stole my question, I'll just reiterate what she was talking about with the cost sharing. We all did say that we were going to pay up to 750,000. So I would like to see a cost sharing of anything further on. So we're not footing the whole bill to begin with. And then at the end, they say, oh, it only cost 2.1 million. And now we're saving ourselves some money. This needs to be a three-way split 100% of the way. So
Yeah, and I believe I'm on the agenda next Monday for meeting with the school board. And one of the things that they want to do is make sure that they had their money allocated towards the project as well, because I'm assuming that if they borrowed it or whatever else, they have to get that spent in a certain time frame as well. So there is interest in making sure that they're continuing, and also that the project would be completed in a timely manner.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Zach.
Phil, can you say that again? Did you say that they have to get the funding still?
No, that they would have to expend it. So
thank
if they've committed the dollars towards the project, but if we were not going to do the project for the next 3 years, then they're going to have to reallocate that money. Otherwise, they could run into issues with arbitrage or whatever. Now, I don't know their exact books, but I'm assuming that based off of if we borrowed money, we have to spend it within a certain time frame, or we're going to be penalized. Then you have to reallocate to a similar style project so that you avoid any penalties from the IRS.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Zach? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway,
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Yes.
Councilmember Hull.
Yes.
Resolution number 227, 2022, authorizing an agreement for professional consulting services between the City of Ottumwa and Retail Strategies. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 227, 2022.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, Zach, I believe you're going to present on this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just to wrap up something on the previous item, I do want to mention the final public meeting for the Greater Ottumwa Parks Master Plan will be tomorrow. There's going to be 2 public meetings, one at noon and one at 5:30 at the Bridgeview Center. And we'd really welcome everybody there to kind of share their final feedback on the 2 different plan alternatives we have for where we're going to lay everything out. And there's a lot of excitement around that topic. This is the item that John gave a presentation on earlier in the meeting. And Councilman McIntyre, just because you signaled a little bit that you've got some skepticism, I might speak more directly toward you. That's because my debate coach taught me when I was competing in front of a panel to pick out the judge that I thought was least likely to vote for me and talk a little more to them. But
Knock yourself out.
but I do want to comment a couple of comments. I don't want to repeat too much of what John did, but I think it's important, first of all, that this project is a citywide retail recruiting strategy. It's extending beyond downtown. They've worked in a lot of communities across the country, including in the state of Iowa. They worked for Dubuque and over 10 retailers located in Dubuque during the course of their commitment with retail strategies. And if you look at the the report that I included, which was the sales tax paid by the 100 largest retailers in the country, if you took those annual sales of any of those 10 retailers, even the bottom 10 of those retailers, we'd be able to pay for this contract within just a few years and begin sort of receiving the profit off of this endeavor. But I do want to comment a little also on why we do believe that downtown is worth continuing investment. Just a few, things I do want to kind of make sure are always put out there. The first is that over the last 5 and 10 years, revenue growth in terms of value per acre downtown has been significantly greater than any other part of the community. We've been following a process. Main Street is not just the group that Fred works for, it's a process. And the Main Street communities across the country are following the same sort of guiding principles. And on the small level, we look at an individual building. When that building's in disrepair, we start with the roof. Because we want to stop the decay, we stop rain from getting in. Then we do the facade to make the space not have broken windows, to make it inviting. And then we do the white box. That's the strategy we've done with each building, but it's also the strategy that we've done with the entire district. We've stopped the decay. We've made the space more inviting by doing the streetscape. And then we work on bringing in the retail. Councilman Rowe used an analogy earlier in the meeting, so I'll try to do one as well. To abandon investment downtown right now would almost be like being a prospector and throwing away your shovel right before you hit the gold. We're working a tried and true process. There's a lot of communities with thriving main streets, even in Iowa. Muscatine's Main Street that we visited on a site visit recently is doing great. And it's not anything magic about Muscatine. They don't have, they have the same pressures with online shopping and those things. I think there is significant opportunities still to be made in our progress downtown. But this, like I said, is a citywide project. Retail Strategies would work with the city for 3 years. The Legacy Foundation has committed $60,000 of the total $160,000 cost for this project. And we're looking at using ARPA funds for the balance of the project because this is exactly what those ARPA funds are meant to do. They're meant to look at areas impacted by the community or by the pandemic, which is retail, and make one-time investments that are going to pay off in larger growth over time. We did include in the packet a memo outlining why this program is an appropriate use for ARPA funds. It's also mentioned in the resolution, but we're not going to be the only community that's using this program in that way. I think that's probably all I need to say. I can just answer questions about the project because I think John covered a lot of the details.
Does council have any questions for Zach? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
No.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Resolution number 229, 2022, approving a temporary wage rate adjustment for street maintenance supervisor. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 229, 2022.
Do we have a motion for this recommendation?
Move the recommendation is presented.
Second.
I believe, Barb, you're going to present on this.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We have recently had our public works superintendent take another position within the city, so that's vacated this position. This position runs everything down at the garage and does a lot with our streets and our sewer and traffic, keeping things going down there and working with Larry and his department. So we've got the position posted. We pulled the first round of resumes, and we are in the process right now of scheduling interviews to fill that position. However, we do need someone to take that interim spot. And so we have asked our current street maintenance and patch crew supervisor, Robin Fitzsimmons, to step in as an interim superintendent, which he has agreed to. And this would be just approving the temporary wage adjustment for him until we get that position filled.
Does council have any questions for Barb?
I do. So with the wage rate adjustment, do we have a set policy in place for that?
There is not. This is what we have done in the past in this type of situation. When we have someone that there is no one in that position, and we've got someone who is filling in every day as well as doing their other roles, this is what has been done in the past. If we do have another instance where if we do have someone that maybe just like while we're on vacation, it may not be this great of a rate simply because we know that person is coming back. We know that there is somebody else that's going to be there to be able to bounce those ideas and things off of. So in this case, this has been kind of a past practice. Mm-hmm. There is not a specific policy on this, but this is one of the things that we have asked from Gallagher with that wage and benefit study of one of the intended outcomes when they proposed to us the compensation plan to advise us of what would be the recommendation when we do have a position that is open. What would you recommend that compensation policy to look like?
Perfect, because that's what I was going to ask, if we could develop a policy around this so that we know and other people within the city understand and know what to expect.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Barb? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barb.
Resolution number 230, 2022, approving change order number 3 for the Ottumwa Park Campground Shower House and Office Project. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 230, 2022.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Etchie, you're up.
Thank you, Your Honor. Change order number 3 will involve adding an ice dam and moisture barrier to the roof and also removing 2 tree root balls by the north side of the building. The original contract amount with RG Construction was $573,672. Change order number 1 was for $595, which increased the contract amount to $574,467. Change order number 2 was for $15,250, which increased the contract amount to $589,717. Change order number 3 is for $3,425, which increases the contract amount to $593,142.
Does council have any questions for Gene?
Just for clarification, do you remember the original budget amount on this contract? It's like 615,000, something like that?
That was the architect's original cost estimate for the project, 616,000, right?
So we're still quite a bit under that.
Yes.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Resolution number 236, 2022, approving leadership training for city leaders. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 236, 2022.
Do we have a motion for that recommendation?
Move the recommendation is presented.
Second.
Okay, Barb, I believe you're going to present on this as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So one of the things that we've identified within me coming on board is we do have a lack of consistent leadership training for our leaders within the city of Ottumwa in all of our departments. So one of the things that we've looked at doing is we have reached out to other cities to identify what they do. We've reached out through ICMA to see the training that is offered through there. And the intent would really to be to start developing our leaders for the city, developing them into true leaders. Not that they're not now, but developing them even more. And so what we've done is based on recommendations from other cities and again, looking at some of the Ken Blanchard trainings, some of the ICMA trainings. This training that we've identified is called the Leadership Communication to Improve Teamwork. This is something that the city of Muscatine has used for the last couple of years, came very highly recommended from their staff and from their HR director that's there. Webster City is looking at utilizing this training as well. There were references that were provided to us that we've reached out. This training has been done in community colleges on the east side of Iowa, as well as for 20 years at a medical facility. So this training would be for 40 of our leaders, and it would be a week-long training where we would take our leaders, put them into this training class, work with the trainer that's there, going through situational leadership, talking about positive communication to our employees, providing constructive feedback to them, and really being able to start at that ground zero of talking about leadership. During one of our department head meetings, we had talked about performance reviews and being able to accurately communicate with our employees about expectations and providing not only the concerns or questions that we have, not disciplinary, but like development type things, but also being able to positively recognize our employees. And that's what this training would help to do. So cost on the training is $41,500 for 40 people. The trainer was able to give us a $3,000 discount if we approve it by the end of September, because what he can do is he can combine us with Webster City and with Muscatine, and he can order all of the print materials in bulk. With this $41,000, we've also approached the Legacy Foundation, and they are willing to provide us with $10,000 to be able to offer this to our leadership team. One of the things that the Legacy Foundation has requested, which was something that was on our agenda to do, we weren't ready for it quite yet, but we will make sure that we are ready for it now, is to do some type of benchmark study, benchmark survey of our employees to find out where we're at now, once we do this training, where we are then in a year down the road. So the intent was really to do some type of employee opinion survey, which if anybody is familiar with Gallup, something like them that they have done, where we contact our employees through an anonymous survey, ask them for feedback based upon questions like, I feel that there is career advancement in my position. My supervisor gives me constructive feedback on a consistent basis. Things like that. We want to be able to ask our employees that information, tailor it really to this training that we're going to be able to do. And then in 1 year, we'll ask the same thing and be able to give us a benchmark. And that way we can gauge what our ROI is. Initially, like I said, this is 40 people for the 41,500. If Legacy can give us that 10,000, that reduces our cost to 31,500, which is $787 per employee. Investing that much in our employees, that's very well worth it.
Is the rest of the money, what fund would that come out of? The general
Comes out of
fund?
the risk management fund. We worked with our accountant that we've got the funds that are in there, and the intent behind it would be to be able to reduce the risk with our employee turnover or performance, things like that.
Yep, thank you.
Is this the same program we talked about a little while ago? The book you gave me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So as somebody that's been through numerous leadership trainings and is currently in one and has been a leader, when I looked at that book, I just thought, man, this is like dead on. This is something that every leader should go through. I think that this is going to help us in the long run with leadership. So I'm glad to see that we're taking this step, especially since we're trying to recruit employees and they want to move up within the city and they don't all want to just stay street sweepers for the rest of their lives. So,
And there's nothing wrong if they do want to.
there is nothing wrong with staying a street sweeper the rest of your life, but some people, I won't use Larry as an example again because I don't want anybody dogging on him today, but we do want people to step up and become leaders of our city. So, I think this is a very good return on our investment. Will be really good on this one. So thank you for bringing it to us.
Yeah.
And because it's probably not a good idea to have all your managers and supervisors tied up for a week, this is going to be offered 3 different times, correct? For
Correct.
people to go to different trainings that fit into their schedule. So we still have
Yes.
some supervisors on the job while the rest of them are in these trainings.
Yes, we will stagger the enrollment into it. There is kind of a strategic mindset as to who will go when, simply the other part of it too would be, it's not going to all be the streets department or it's not going to all be recycling, but it will be numerous departments around the city to help build that teamwork.
I know we used to do this when I was at River Hills, and doing those annual employee surveys and getting their feedback really is another good way of trying to retain good employees. And so I'm like, Russ, I applaud you for really pushing this because I don't think there's been a lot of leadership training in years past with our managers and supervisors, and they're being shortchanged if we don't provide them that opportunity.
Yes, we've got a lot of really great people and we need to invest in them.
Most definitely. Anybody have any other questions for Barb? If not, Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barb.
Resolution number 238, 2022, adopting revised format for city council agendas. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 238, 2022.
Do we have a motion for the recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Phil, I believe you're going to take this.
Yeah, on August 16th or this year, the city council approved a resolution approving implementation of the agenda management software. In preparation of that work, the council had discussed potential revisions to the agenda formatting. It was in a work session, I believe. Revisions to the agenda include some phrasing as well as reordering of broad agenda categories. And this would then go into be hard-coded with the new software and kind of just revise that formatting. So just for future meetings, if this were to be adopted, and then kind of looking ahead, one of the things was reordering, putting the public hearings right at the top there after the identification of citizens' comments. And because most of the ordinances, or most of the ones that are public hearings are also ordinances, having that be the next thing right there, so it would kind of flow a little better. Kind of rephrasing that to having it be departmental, board, or commission recommendation or reports. So if there's anything from a future board or commission that wanted to report on something, there's a place for that. And then having resolutions, public forum. And then finally, changing that petitions and communications, because sometimes petitions was getting queued as to a physical petition, not the the term, changing that to mayor, city council report, and or communications. So there was a talk about if there was something, I know the mayor kind of will state some under the communications at the end, but there's also where city council has had something they wanted to bring up. So those were kind of the revised recommendations.
Does council have any questions for Phil? Chris, is there anything you'd like to say? Because I know this would greatly help your department. Okay. Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, then Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
Okay, this is a point in our agenda where I'll ask if there's anyone that would like to speak on any items that are not on tonight's agenda. And we do have one individual that has filled out a paper to do that. And I'd ask you to come forward at this time and speak. Give us your name and address, and give you at least 3 minutes to talk about what you want to talk about.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. My name is Josh Husted. I am a resident of Bloomfield, Iowa. My address is 1104 East Franklin in Bloomfield. I am co-owner of JMH Enterprises with my father. We purchase dilapidated houses within this community, and he is a retired building housing inspector for Ottumwa. I believed he worked 25, 30 years for Ottumwa, and all of our properties we gut and totally redo them. The difference between us as landlords and other landlords is we do not charge excessive rent. We charge very reasonable rent, low rent compared to many individuals. We purchased a property at 121 and 123 North McLean in February of 2016. It had been built as a duplex in 1912, and it had caught on fire, and we purchased it after the fire, and we totally gutted the entire property. We spent approximately $45,000 plus redoing the property without the purchase of the property, and it is beautiful today. It's at its current condition. It's a gem. If you drive by it, it's a busy street. McLean is a busy street. All of the properties on that street are zoned residential. And in 2014, the neighbor at 127 North McLean, his name is Robert Valencia. He purchased a garage at tax sale. And since 2014, he has turned that into a scrapyard. In 2016, at 129 North McLean, Tim LaPointe purchased a house, and it has since burnt down, and city has taken possession of the tax certificate on the vacant lot. The resident, Robert, has basically been scrapping on his property, and the property next door that has a tax lien against it that the city owns, he has turned that into a complete junkyard. I have pictures. Can I give you pictures or can I hand you pictures?
These are the ones you emailed us, correct?
Yes, I did.
Has everybody seen those?
So what he's done is basically taken over the lot next to him, which is 2 spots down from our duplex, and it's completely full of junk, completely full of scrap. We've requested many times for him to clean that up. He has not done so. I have met with the health department, and I've met with the city administrator. I've sent emails, pictures. My main concern with this property is it is zoned residential, and it is a busy street in Ottumwa. Many people pass by that property, and it's a complete eyesore. He has put in large shed that goes from his property to the adjoining property. It's on both sides. I've asked him to clean it up. He has then our driveway that pulls into our property, he has built out and told us that he was going to put up a privacy fence with intentions of turning that into a complete scrapyard. And I've asked him multiple times not to. He does not have sanitation on that property. I've walked by that property several times with his garage door open, and he is using the bathroom in a bucket in his garage and dumping it in the street down the sewer. He has multiple people pulling in and out of that property at all times at night. We have the duplex is a 7,000 square foot duplex. It has 3 bedrooms on both sides. Again, it's a complete gut job. It's a really nice property. We have families on both sides. The side next to his garage, she has 3 small children. And there's many vehicles in and out of his property. She's contacted me at times, like she sent me text messages at like 3 or 4 in the morning. There's just a lot of activity on that property, and I'm basically at a loss on it. I don't know what else to do. This is a last resort. I serve on city council in Bloomfield. So thank you for your service. I know what it's like. I know what the long meetings are like, and you never like someone bringing this information, but I feel that I have to because it's a last resort.
Did you say you talked to Mr. Simonson, our community development director, about all this?
After I sent that email, I wrote a complaint on this city online form, and that was on September 8th, and I haven't had anybody contact me since then. Mr. Rowe was nice enough to email me back, and I appreciate that. It means a lot. Other than that, I've had no communication, and I would like to know what is being done about this, being that it is in a residential neighborhood. I've talked to several of the neighbors. They do not appreciate him being there. It's a for-profit business, and it's destroying the neighborhood.
I will say I did get your email, and I apologize that I didn't email you back. I assumed when you sent the email, you sent it to all of council, including the mayor and the city administrator. I'm just actually learning that the mayor didn't receive it. I apologize. That was my fault. I should have followed up with you on that. The day that you sent that email, I'd actually drove by in my truck. I work from commercial sanitation, and I had noted the property, the look of the property. So unfortunately, we can't do anything here tonight except for make direction. And I think one of the directions I think the council would agree on is we need to follow up on this and figure out the way that the city can take care of this issue.
And he's made several comments that no matter what I do or say, nothing will get done because he knows people in the city, and I can't figure that out. If he does or he doesn't, that's beside the point. But it's bad, and there's kids in that neighborhood.
So, and this isn't, I appreciate your concern. And this is perhaps a question for Chief Farrington, and I don't expect an answer tonight, but it is my understanding that law enforcement has been contacted on multiple occasions about noise disturbances there in the middle of the night. So I would be curious how many times that the police department over the last 6 months, a year, 2 years even, how many times the police department has been notified of issues at that address?
I know that he's had people like literally working for him, pitching tents in the lot next door. And I don't know. I'm just asking something be done.
Zach, do you have any comment you want to make?
Yes, I can give a little bit of an update. As Mr. Husted said, he did make a complaint September 8th, and a notice was sent out September 8th to the property owner identifying nuisance issues. That notice expires September 21st, which is tomorrow. So the property will be rechecked. And there's some things that we can do at that point. We can issue citations. If there had been progress, we might look at final notice or additional extensions, but it doesn't sound like there's probably been very much progress made in the last few days. So we'll be making that recheck inspection tomorrow, and we'll be continuing to follow up with the file. It looks like probably a civil citation would be the next step in the process. There is a number of issues there that we did identify. And I do want to add just a little bit of clarification as well. With the vacant lot next to it, we do currently hold the tax sale certificate to that property, but it is not due yet to be served. So we don't have any rights of ownership there, but we can enforce the nuisance code when there's anything present on that lot that shouldn't be there. It is the responsibility of the owner of that property to keep anybody off of it. And we're told that he's been given permission by the owner of that property to be there sometimes. So that we can't necessarily exercise rights of ownership, but we can enforce the code, and we're going to be doing that as we move forward with the file. And I will also just say that we don't always make any direct contact with folks that we get complaints from. If somebody does specifically request that we contact them back, we usually do try to do that. And I'm sorry that we didn't do that in this case if that was desired, but there is a way to track all of the open cases on ottumwapermits.com where you make the complaints. You can also search by address for open complaint cases, and you can look for notices that we've sent and things like that. And if you have made a complaint and you want to check on those, that is a resource as well.
And just for my clarification, if it's a residential property, that doesn't authorize you to run a scrapyard or junkyard out of a residential property, does it?
No. And we did verify the zoning. It is zoned residential. There was some question about maybe being some commercial uses permitted because up to 3rd Street you can. So the block just south of it, there's some houses that are actually zoned commercial. But this area is zoned residential. And so there wouldn't really be any of the types of uses that are described wouldn't be permitted there. The only permitted use for that building would be well, there's really not much because you're not supposed to have an accessory building without a main building. So you could probably quietly keep things inside of it because it's already there. But you wouldn't be able to do any home-based occupation because there's no home. And then you wouldn't be able to really do any other exterior type uses.
So after tomorrow, your department is planning on filing some kind of citations as appropriate then?
Well, we'd have to do the inspection first, but if
Right.
it is as it is, then that's the next step.
Thank you, Mr. Husted, for bringing this to our attention.
Bring up one more point. With having the duplex at 121, 123, I realize that you own the tax certificate on that. When and if it does come up for sale, we would pay fair market value for that small lot and clean that up. It would not be a problem. I guarantee it would not be a problem for Ottumwa anymore. We've bought lots before and we maintain those lots and they're beautiful. I do not believe that this lot is a lot that would be desirable to build on. It's very, very small. So I want to throw that out there. So thank you.
We do appreciate what your company is trying to do to make our neighborhoods look better too with your updating of properties and renting them back out. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other items that they would like to bring up that's not on tonight's agenda? If not, is there any communications by the city administrator or council that any of you would like to make at this time?
I would just like to remind everyone that September is Suicide Prevention Month, and to reach out and check in on those that you think are suffering and those that may not be suffering. And just to remind everyone that you can call or text 988 if you ever need help, and you will talk to a live person. Thanks.
I'd just like to thank the council for their votes earlier tonight. There's a lot of good comments, and I know that some of these decisions are not easy, but I think it is necessary in continuing to move Ottumwa forward. So thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Chris will take the roll.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Galloway?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Yes.
Councilmember Hull?
Yes.
We are adjourned, and thank you, everybody, for attending our city council meeting tonight. Have a good evening.